The Introvert's Edge podcast was designed to create a dialogue around introversion, to stimulate a discussion around our disadvantages, how we overcome those disadvantages, and what we consider our introvert's edge. Together, we're finally going to confront the stigma around introversion, showing that we're not second-class citizens, we're just different, and we need to embrace that. Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Introvert's Edge podcast. I have to admit, I'm ecstatic about this interview we're about to do because Anthony Iannarino, he is a person that I have known for years. I can't believe I haven't had him on the podcast sooner, and we will definitely bring that up about how we've waited so long, I'm sure, during this show. But, you know, Anthony's written 6 books now, 6. So he's definitely well ahead of me. And if you check all the reviews, these are not books that he just threw up, got 15 reviews and moved to the next one. These are all massive bestsellers. They've all got hundreds and hundreds of 5-star reviews. But it didn't start from success. You'll get to hear about his story about the fact that he wasn't supposed to be in sales. He was supposed to be a rock and roller. And also that he ended up selling from the age of 15, which to the average introvert listening, I can imagine sounds terrifying. But we're going to get into all of that and how it wasn't the best experience for him, but how he started to step through it in a way that he found was comfortable for him as well. But Anthony, I'm ecstatic to have you here, mate.
Well, thank you for having me. It's good to see you.
Yeah, it's terrific to get to do this and to see you as well. And we've left it too long for us catching up as well. So hopefully we can remedy that. I think COVID has made us all just a little bit more used to not seeing all of our friends as often. So I think that a lot of introverts, especially listening at the moment now, perhaps even find it a little bit more difficult to reach out to people, which is why sales as a topic is so vitally important. And I really want to get into your story a little bit, because when I hear the concept of I want to be a rock and roller, and I also want to believe that this person that I'm listening to is going to be able to help me as an introvert. And I mean, want to be a rock and roller, even though there's a huge number of rock and rollers that are introverted, and then chose to pick up the phone and actually do sales calls at the age of 15. Tell me a little bit about, I mean, those seem like 2 different people's backgrounds, not a single person. So help us understand you a little bit more.
Yeah, I can share. I don't know that I've ever shared this before, but I'll share it with you. When I went to St. James the Less Catholic schools, uh, I was really introverted, and I was also fearful. So there's all these kids that grew up with a father and a mother. They're in football. They're really good at sports, all of those things. I'm not good at anything. I'm literally not good at anything at all. I'm not interested in being in school. I don't want to be around these people. I'm totally introverted. So I don't even speak. I mean, I have to sit because I don't have the courage to even ask for a hall pass to go to the bathroom. That's how introverted. That's where I started. And I was always afraid, like, these people are stronger than me. They're bullies. There's all these things that were happening to me at that particular time. And I don't know if I've ever told this to anybody, but at some point, uh, I had a reaction to this, and I started to engage, and I was engaging with the worst possible people that you can imagine. So if you have children, like, these would be the people you would say, I don't want you being around. That's what I was around for a long time. And at some point, it started to help me come out of my shell very, very late. Like, I have a little daughter. She's tiny. She's like 5 foot tall. She reacted to her brother and sister, and she came out of her shell really fast. And then she's never gone back in. Like, she's just aggressive. I couldn't imagine, like, she was like 7 and that happened to her. And then for me, it was like probably 13, 14 before I could even talk. I mean, literally, I was afraid of everything. I was poor, though. So I think you have a similar background where you have some traumas and lots of things that you're not really happy that happened to you, but you do have a chance to look at that through the mindset and say it made me stronger than I would have been if I didn't have these things happen. So when I started to come out of my shell, I realized I was poor. And I was really poor. Like, we ate fish sticks macaroni and cheese, and hamburger helper. That's what the entire diet was. It's all my mom could afford with 4 kids by herself in a little apartment. And I decided, I don't really like this. I have to do something. So the first thing I did at 12 years old was I started a newspaper route. And somebody told me, if you knock on the door and you ask people to buy this, you will get money. And I thought, I don't know if I can do that. And I'm knocking on strangers' doors. At the end of my time with the newspaper, I had 300 Sunday newspapers to deliver every Sunday. It took me the whole day to get people's papers to them. After that, I went to washing dishes, where again I could sort of hide and hang out, and I was getting fed prime rib, chocolate mousse, lasagna, as much as I wanted every single day. So it's like my life was changing dramatically. But when I left that, I went to a not-for-profit muscular dystrophy, which you probably remember. And I was responsible for calling people and asking them to do a bike-a-thon. I was 15 years old. I've got a list of phone numbers and I've got a script, and I start making calls. And of course, like, it's constant no, right? We don't want to put on a bike-a-thon. No, 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 always no's. And at some point I decided this isn't the best thing for me. I need to find another job. I got a job at a skating rink as a person that takes care of making sure people don't get hurt. And I got a call from them, and they said, you're the only person that's ever had a bike-a-thon, and you had 2. So we need you to come back. And I was like, no possibility at all. I'm never going back to making cold calls. Well, fast forward, I'm playing in a rock and roll band. My mom and her business partner have a business, and I take a job with them where I'm responsible for calling to ask people for a meeting. And so, of course, more no's, and just more no after no after no. And it took me a while before I got a hold of what I was really trying to do. And I started to be a little bit more, I'm going to say, outgoing than I was. And then playing rock and roll also made me more outgoing. Even though the first time I ever played on a stage, Matthew, I was like hiding behind the microphone stand. Like I was like trying to hide. I'm the front man of a hair metal band, and I am stuck in that place just because I wasn't free enough with my body or my movements or the things that I wanted to say. And it took a long time for me to get over that. My brother, who was my bass player, was totally outgoing. Like, he's just a madman. He's running all over the place. He's a wild man. And I'm like, man, I wish I could do that, but I can't. I can't move my feet. I can't move my body. And eventually, I got comfortable enough that I could start doing that. And I think there are other people who are frontmen who are also introverts. So I would look at somebody like Eddie Vedder. Like, he's not David Lee Roth. He's not Mick Jagger. He's none of those things, right? But he's still very successful because he's got something to say. So that's how I sort of came out of my shell. It took me a lot longer than I wish it would have.
Anthony, I want to just firstly really appreciate your honesty there. And if this is the first time you're sharing it, which it sounds like it is, I think it's exactly what the audience needed to hear, because, I mean, you're a big deal when it comes to the world of sales. I mean, you run a conference, you speak on a lot of massive stages, and for somebody to hear that, I mean, to the point, the fact that you even cold called and then went, no, not for me, I can't stand this. And now I know that you teach people sales, and you have one of these books on the topic of closing, which, as an introvert, the whole idea probably gives people heebie-jeebies just hearing that. So we're going to get into that, but I really feel that your story is going to really inspire a lot of people. And I think that one of the things that I'm really interested in, though, and I think that this is really important for especially the small business audience to hear, is that a lot of introverts really feel the need to be 100% about their customers. And a lot of the time they feel like sales isn't helping their customers. I keep trying to tell them that sales was derived from the Scandinavian term to serve, but then it's like they feel like they have to become a different person when it comes to selling. And I mean, you've written a book called Eat Their Lunch. And that's all about stealing your clients from the competitors. I could just imagine the mental explosions people are having just hearing these concepts as I'm bringing them up. Can you help people understand, how you see sales and really where you see small business owners getting in their own way when it comes to getting their self mentally right to sell?
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of baggage that comes with the idea of selling. And it's because, like, right now we got all the bros, right? The bros who are like pushing, always trying to ask questions like, could you do this by Friday? Like, it's all self-oriented. I mean, so this is the one thing where the introvert has such a higher probability of winning by being other oriented. Like, this is the most important thing. I've said this since the first book. Selling isn't something that you're doing to somebody. You're doing it for them and with them to benefit them. That's what we're doing. And if you ever feel like, well, I shouldn't be trying to serve them this way, you are incorrect. Like, this is exactly what people want. They want help. And when you think about the environment that we're in right now, I always call this the AC/DC environment. Even though I was a good Bon Scott and I could also do Brian Johnson when I was a singer, but this is a different AC/DC. This is accelerating constant disruptive change. And that's where we live. We got a hot war in Europe. Who would have thought that was going to be happening? The greatest inflation in 40 years. We've got political divisiveness. We have all these factors that are weighing on the environment that we're in. And what this means is that people need more help. They need more certainty. They need us to give them more time. I know a lot of people in sales, their sales leaders are like, we need to get velocity. We have to do it faster. Slow down, give them your time, give them your attention, give them your help. And you have such a greater odd of winning their business by being that person and not the person who's trying to push them. You never have to push. It's a game of pull. Like, when you have a great conversation with someone and they're learning and they're trying to figure out how to make this decision with your help, you're in a much better place than anybody else. So I would say just be who you are. And the other thing is, you can't be anybody else anyway. I mean, I'd like to be as handsome as Matt, but I'm not. I look like a Ukrainian, Russian of some kind because I have a lot of that in my blood. So I look like this, but he's a handsome guy and he's got his attributes and I have mine and you have yours. And so you go with what you've been given and that will be enough for you. It will be exactly enough for you.
It's funny. I mean, there's an element in my book where I talk about having really bad acne and a basketball hitting my face and the pimple bursting and how embarrassing that was for me. But that led to me selling in a way that I felt like I was always coming from behind because I didn't feel like I could leverage, I guess, my natural ability to coerce because I was a good-looking kid or something like that, because I was always uncomfortable. And I think that practice, and it's the thing I love about your books, that you talk about, especially in your first book, you talk about any person can learn to sell as long as they're willing to follow a methodical series of steps. And I think that, and it's funny, I was talking to Don Miller, the guy that wrote The Story Brand, recently.
Yeah.
And he was a wonderful guest on the show. And what we were talking about the fact, because I know you focus on storytelling as well, so I'm really interested in this from you, but when we were talking about the fact that introverts don't like to be all about them, as a matter of fact, whether it's fear or not, they don't want to be the face of their brand sometimes. But when you tell them to tell a story, the story's all about them and how amazing they were. And we were talking about, well, how is that the case? It's like, well, actually a neediness, perhaps, because there's this, I need you to accept me kind of thing that stops you being about them. Now, in your book, Eat Their Lunch, sorry, you talk about the fact that when you're thinking about sales and especially stealing clients from your competitors in these highly competitive spaces, you actually say it's not about you as well. You talk about the fact that because a lot of small business, like any customer is a good client, but what you say is really lean into the fact that there are certain groups, if you forget about yourself and you need a client, there are customers in that space that have more to gain by working with you than others, but it's the focus on everybody that gets you unstuck. For a lot of the
Absolutely.
people in that space that have no idea, they think that this sounds nice, but they have no meaningful way to process that. And how would you suggest they go about getting out of any customer's a good customer to how do I eat the lunch of the people that I'm actually serving in a more effective way? So it's not about me.
It really is never about us. And what I figured out in staffing was that there were a lot of people who were apathetic, or they've worked with the client so long, they now hate the client and they don't want to be around them anymore because they've just had so many problems over time. They're not bringing new value. And then the client's getting stuck and they're missing some sort of what we might call an inflection point where something changed, but then they didn't care enough to go help them with that change. So there's all these factors. So I always see these metrics that are like only 3 people are looking to buy from you. I have no idea if that's true. I doubt it. I'm very skeptical about that because I've run into a whole bunch of people who, Matthew, it starts like this. We're very happy with our existing provider. And then I get a meeting with them and then they start out by saying, they've been with us for a long time. We have a lot of good relationships with them. They're pretty good. Sometimes they don't get things right. You know what? We're really interested in having a conversation. And you're like, they went from I love them to I'm not getting what I want. But that's just the nature of the relationship, as they can't just go like, Matthew, we hate them. They just won't do that. It'll just sort of like wind down. They're waiting for somebody to step in and say, you can get better results. We can help you with that. And in the business that I was in most of my life, I couldn't win a client unless I'm taking it from somebody else. Like everybody already had a staffing company. They weren't like, let's wait and see if somebody shows up. They were getting called on every day by 4 or 5 people. I was literally sitting from across from a client once, and he answered the phone on speaker so I could hear my competitor saying all kinds of bad things about my company. And we hung up. He got another call. He put it on, and it was a second competitor. And I thought, wow, like this is what his day is like. There's a whole bunch of people trying to displace me. They didn't displace me, and that was amazing. But before I left, he handed me everybody's collateral. Like he gave me every proposal and everything, so I could see what they were doing. And that's just the nature of the relationship that we had. But it's something that you're doing because people still need your help. And I would tell you if that is what motivates you, and it should, because when you help another person get a result that they couldn't get without you, they're going to be appreciative of that and you're going to feel good about what you're doing. And that's the reason that I stayed in sales, is because I actually liked helping people. I still like helping people. I mean, I can't think of anything that brings me more joy than helping other people get better results than the results that they're getting. I know that's true for you too, or you wouldn't do it.
I think that's a really powerful message for you to tell people, because I think that a lot of people believe that they need to become somebody that they're not just to get a sale. And it's all about closing the deal, where I don't want to work with people that I can't add value to. And I, a lot of times, will say, well, if I don't close this customer, I'm doing them a disservice, because if they get on a phone call with somebody else that's a better salesperson than me that has a lesser product, they're going to end up forever being worse off. So I've trained my psychology to be on my side in a lot of ways. And while I really want to get into, because you've got, some amazing stuff where you talk about not being intimidated about competition, but actually, really embracing it. I think that's really powerful. But I really want to get into the mindset piece. And just for the people listening, because I want to let you know, I get the benefit of interviewing Anthony twice today. So we're going to be, if you haven't registered yet for the Introverted Seller Summit, make sure you do that, because if you're enjoying this interview, but perhaps it feels a little bit more on the abstract of believing you can, well, that's what we wanted it to be, because I feel like belief is 9/10 of the journey for us introverts. But we want to get into the practical stuff too, and we're definitely going to do that in the Introverted Seller Summit, which if you register now, it's free to join and it's free to come and listen to Anthony. I would highly recommend you do that. But before we go and finish up this interview, I really want to hammer this mindset thing, because I know that, I mean, it's a passion that I share, that negativity or pessimism is the devil when it comes to salespeople, small business, and just being introverted in general sometimes. Because, and you talk about negative bias in the new book that you've got coming out. I would love for you to just share briefly, why you think we get into these negative loops and how it affects us. And then perhaps, and, I know the book's coming out very shortly, a little bit about where people can perhaps check out that book.
Yeah, we're going to have it on pre-sale here very quick. This idea of negativity bias is really what psychiatric people who are looking at how did we get here, it's an evolution, and it was designed to keep us alive. So if you think about your 10,000 years in the past, saber-toothed tigers, anything that you're trying to eat is also trying to eat you at the same time. Anybody that your neighbor is likely to hit you in the head with a rock or something and steal your food or your wife, whatever. Like it's a terrible environment to be in. And so we developed the ability to be a little bit skeptical, a little bit cynical and negative, because the people who were not negative enough end up getting eaten very soon, because they're so positive that they're going to be able to take down a woolly mammoth or something. So this is what we know. Like that's how we got here, and it stays with us. But one of the things that happens when you're now many years in the future, right? We are designed for a high stress environment. So there's a saber-toothed tiger. You run away, you get free. After that, you don't worry about it. But now what we have are these low stress level things that are just constant. So you're not designed for these constant low stressors all day long. So you're worried about your kids, you're worried about inflation, you're worried about your bank being in trouble, you're worried about political divisiveness, the kid with long hair that's driving with his stereo all the way up in my court. I mean, like all of these things. And it's too much for us. And I'll give you a couple points on this. In 1970, Alvin Toffler, who wrote Future Shock, said that the rate of change in our environment is so fast that it's actually an elemental force of its own. And that if we don't get control over the rate of change in our environment, we're going to have serious psychological problems in the future. We can't go as fast as our technology now goes. So now we've got AI. Ray Kurzweil, who created the optical character recognition and the Kurzweil synthesizer and 138 other things that he patented, he now is the head of AI for Google. And what he said in 1995 in a book called The Singularity is Near is that the rate, when we get to what's called the knee, where the AI is now smarter than us, we're not quite there yet, but we're getting there. He said it's going to rip the fabric of human history. That's what he says. And Yuval Noah Harari, who wrote Sapiens and Dos Homo, he said that all this information that we're getting actually is just confusing us, and it's even making us more stressed. So this is where we are. So when you start thinking about this external environment, the rate of change right now, it's just very difficult for people, which is why we have so much concern about mental health. And when you look at things like homelessness and you look at the stats around fentanyl, 110,000 people die of fentanyl every year. And the reason our expectation of life is reducing right now is fentanyl and suicide. Those are the two major factors right now. So this is where we are. So I wrote a book called The Negativity Fast because I felt like I did it for me. I wrote the book for me. I did the work for me. And then I realized I should be making this available to other people who want to get control of their negativity. And I want to make sure that people understand this. I'm not a doctor, I'm not a psychiatrist. I'm a person that looks for strategies that work. And I will tell you, after reading all that I read, and there's a big part of the book that's just citations at the end, you're allowed to be negative. Sometimes it's good for you to be negative. Sometimes it's exactly the appropriate response to have to some event or something that's happening in your world. So don't think like, well, I'm going to be positive every minute of the day. That's not good for you either. You are built this way because this is what we are. So I would say don't think that I have to be positive every minute, and don't think that you have to be negative every minute either. So you have to balance that. But on balance, if you use some good strategies, I'll give you the easiest one for people to execute. Um, Marty Seligman created positive psychology at Penn State, and there was no positive psychology before him. And what he had people do was write down at night 3 things that went well for them and why they went well for them. If you do that for 2 weeks every night, so 3 things, not a gratitude journal, not like I love my family, I'm grateful that, none of that stuff. So something that actually happened during that day. Seligman's research showed that that is more powerful than psychoanalysts and pharmaceuticals, and it lasts for 6 months. So these are the kinds of things that gratitude, when I was studying gratitude, I was stunned, will lower your blood pressure, increase your immunity to diseases. I mean, it's amazing how powerful just gratitude is. But nobody tells you that. They don't tell you that in college or in high school, and you don't know just that how powerful something like that is.
That's a really important message, and it's interesting. I'm playing a balancing act here because the application's far more than just small business, far more than just business and career professionals in general. It's such an important thing for people to hear. So I don't want to belittle it by saying that the applications in running your own business are so vitally important. So I want people to really embrace that for a second. That being said, the applications in business, I just don't feel like I would be here without constantly focusing on banishing negative mindsets. Now, thinking about things, because you have to be a realist and actually looking at the negative things that could happen and assessing those, but not living in them every day. And for
Right.
me, what was really interesting is that, and you've had a very successful career, so I'm wondering about yourself as well, but you almost get success apathy, where you're hitting all these awards and milestones. So you then feel like you've got through a week where lots of good stuff's happened, but you haven't really taken it on. So you still feel like you're not going anywhere. And then for those other people, and I remember what it was like to first get started, and you've got all of these little things that you've achieved, but at the end of the week, you feel like you've achieved nothing because your brain is trying to aggregate those into something as a one significance. So it feels like you're working really hard going nowhere. I feel like from that perspective alone, it's so important to have control over your mindset. So I guess we're running way over time here, but you just opened up a can of worms. I apologize for that. But I really want to make sure for the people that are listening to this, do you find that a lot of people get lost in this kind of lots of little tasks don't seem like as a high level thing, and that's why you're suggesting writing these things down? Or is it just that
Yes.
everything becomes
Yes.
mundane?
Yeah, I think that if you don't take credit for those things, it's a mistake. I mean, even if it's a small win, it's a small win. It's not a small loss. I think that's one of the things that Seligman got right is you have these things that happen and you go like, well, that was okay. It wasn't bad. So it's not negative. But I think if you write them down, and I've done this with one of my companies where I've asked everybody to do their blessings in a chat, and I thought that would go on for 2 weeks. It's still going on. It's been going on for months. Yeah, and they're still interested in saying what good things happened to them, and now it's starting to become a habit.
Well, that's terrific. Well, let's do this. Now, I would recommend to everybody that they definitely check out this book the moment it comes out. And it comes out on October 31st. So, you can definitely pre-order it now. I would recommend to everybody, though, in the meantime, because you'll be listening to this beforehand and before the book comes out, I challenge you to actually write that down, the 3 things that went well and why it went down for 30 days and see the effects it has. And you can keep it separated to small business or you can keep it broad, whatever works for you. Do something that focuses it because you're right. There are so many things that confront us now and it's only going to get more. I think it's a really powerful tool. I finish all my interviews, Anthony, by asking one question because, as you know, I hate the fact that most people look at the problems that introverts have or the reasons for why they're not as successful. And I believe that introverts make the best salespeople, the best networkers. So for me, it's all about confronting this stigma. If you can think about your growing up and the personality and the struggles that you had, my bet is there was one edge that you had over everybody else. The thing that gave you the strength or gave you the advantage because perhaps of the hurdles that you faced. What would you consider your edge?
I had 2 things that were helpful for me. One, at some point, I realized that I was smart, not like genius smart, but just smart. So that was number one. And then number 2, I could make people laugh. And if I could make people laugh, it kept me from getting beat up a lot. So uh, that was the 2 things. I was just trying not to get beat up as often as I was getting beat up, and I was not. I fought a lot. If I was good at it, it would be okay, but I wasn't. It wasn't my thing. So I figured out how to do that. I think that was we all make these adaptations. The introversion is an adaptation to something. And if somebody's an extrovert, that's an it's something that they're going to try to adjust to their environment. Like my tiny daughter, her brothers and sisters are way taller than her. Uh, they were pretty much pushing her around. And then that was her adaptation was like, I'm going to be bigger than you. She's tiny, but she is bigger than them when it comes to her spirit, and that's an adaptation. You are what you are. And listen, you're here for 4,108 weeks on average. I'm looking at 1,377 remaining. And you're here for a short time. Just be the best version of you. There is no reason to try to do anything else. Like you are what you are. You're here for a reason. And just go do that and don't worry about it. It'll all work out.
I think that's an important message for people to hear. And I love every time you say things like be the best version of yourself, you're not trying to convince people to be someone they're not. You're just saying lean into who you are, which I love.
Hey.
We have to cut this interview short because we have another interview to get on for the Introverted Seller Summit. So for those people that are just listening to this one now and have never heard of you before, you've got way too many resources out there. I can feel people getting overwhelmed just hearing it. Where would you suggest? Is there a book, a template, a video that you would suggest people start with to really start their journey into your stuff?
I would tell you the one-up book called Elite Sales Strategies doesn't require that you're an extrovert at all. It doesn't require that you're an introvert. All it requires of you is to be smart and to have good questions for your clients and to know the things that they don't know that they don't know. And that is available to every single person. It has nothing to do with your personality whatsoever. You can do that whether you're an Enneagram 8 like me, or if you're an Enneagram 3, I mean, whatever you happen to be, that's what you are. But anybody can do this.
That's terrific. Well, look, thank you so much for sharing that. And thank you to everyone for listening to one of our longer episodes. I hope you deemed it worth it like I did to continue going, because I feel that mindset is so critical for us as introverts. And it's something that a lot of times we get so into the strategies and the tactics because this part feels perhaps like a waste of time, though I feel like it's the foundations. With shaky foundations, you don't get anywhere. So I hope that people really take the time to do these exercises even though perhaps they don't directly relate to an outcome. My belief is you'll see those outcomes very, very quickly afterwards. But for those people listening that haven't registered yet for the Introverted Seller Summit, please go straight to the introvertedsellersummit.com and register straight away to hear the next part of this interview, where we're really going to get into the practical strategies for introverted sellers. But for today, thank you so much for listening to the Introvert's Edge podcast, and we look forward to seeing you on the next one. Cheers, everyone. I'm Matthew Pollard, the author of The Introvert's Edge to Networking. I'm on a mission to help introverts to be proud of who we are. For the first time, you'll learn a process for networking that feels comfortable and authentic to you as an introvert. A process that doesn't feel salesy or awkward in any way.
I saw at least half of my board members, 3 in particular that I can think of, that now are so comfortable in literally going up to people at events. All of a sudden, I can see the confidence.
Most of the networking books and literature out there really focus on hardcore tactics designed for extroverts. As introverts, we're different, and we need to embrace that. We need a system that allows us to channel our natural introverted strengths into the networking room. You will learn how to be successful at face-to-face networking and a masterful online networker on your terms.
It's beautifully written and it provides tremendous value. So I am honored to say, folks, if you haven't looked at the book, you really need to check out this guy's book. It's excellent.
It gives you that confidence to truly be yourself, knowing that you're going to be presenting yourself in a way that is authentic and will also really resonate with the person that you're talking with.
One of the things you'll love about the Introvert's Edge to Networking is it's jam-packed full of more than 20 stories of introverts just like you. People that have likely started in much tougher spots than where you are right now, and how they've leveraged the strategies that you'll be learning to obtain phenomenal career and small business success.
I was about to give up on my business. The results started coming in right away. In fact, a year later, the Chamber of Commerce awarded me the Business of the Year.
You need to go read his book, because everything he does is what people need, whether they're an introvert or not.
I've been fortunate to receive endorsements from some exceptional introverts like Neil Patel and Ivan Meisner, the founder of the world's largest networking group, BNI.
What I love about the Introvert's Edge is that it talks about the things that make an introvert successful.
The Introvert's Edge to Networking is going to destroy all of the barriers that you have around whether success in networking is possible for you.
Now I'm up to kind of 5 figures, triple my prices or more.
It was like the deals just kept coming in, and it was incredible. Like, I had never seen anything like it before.
I was able to triple my revenue, and that's happened within 6 months.
We've gone from 10 million a year to 20 million a year.
I wrote The Introvert's Edge to Networking after the success of the first in the Introvert's Edge series, which focused on sales. I decided that it was just as important, perhaps even more so, that we had a networking book that was designed to help us as introverts dominate in the networking room and in online networking, that was specifically written for us. So if you're an introvert, don't delay. Head to theintrovertsedge.com/networking to get access to the first chapter of my new book completely for free today.